Fox News political analyst Guy Benson, Axios political reporter Steph Kite, and Fox News media analyst Howard Kurtz. Guy, Wall Street Journal get it right there?
Absolutely right. And I think back to waking up on New Year's Day of this year to the horror of an ISIS-inspired terrorist attack in this country, in New Orleans. And here we are closing out the year with yet another apparently ISIS-inspired attack, this time on the other side of the world. And for people who have been chanting, including in this country, things like globalize the intifada for the last 2 years, this is what that looks like in practice. And for many of those people, they've spent the same period of time trying to turn Zionism into a slur, when in fact these attacks on Jews, in my estimation, make the moral case for a Jewish state armed to the teeth.
You know, Steph, you heard the Israeli Prime Minister and very getting forceful in that Q&A with reporters. The Executive Council on Australian Jewry report on anti-Jewish incidents put out the annual number of incidents. Look at this, 2022, 478. You see it climb in 23, 24 at 2,062, and 25 at 1,654. Clearly, there is an issue in Australia.
There is. I mean, those data points are so sad to see, and this is clearly not, a one-off case. This comes in a context of increased anti-Semitism, not only in Australia, but around the world. And it was led to this tragic moment. And, my heart goes out to all the people who are mourning loved ones right now. And as we continue to get to the bottom of how this happened. But it's clear that this is a broader issue. And I think it is good to hear Australian officials now being very clear with their statements that this was an anti-Semitic attack.
Yeah, and the interesting part of this story, Howie, is this hero, Ahmed Al-Ahmed. He disarms one of the Bondi shooters, and he said that despite the immense pain he's in, he does not regret lunging at the gunman. Take a look at that. And we saw this video over the weekend. He's a Muslim, arrived in Australia in 2006 from Syria, but felt like he had to get into action.
Kudos to him. What an act of bravery, and probably saved a lot of lives. It's been 7 years, Brett, since the Pittsburgh Tree of Life massacre at the synagogue there. And a lot of people said, well, America, it's awash in guns. Well, Australia has some of the toughest gun control measures in the world, and yet we have this tragedy. You can't legislate against this kind of vile anti-Semitic hatred that seems to be rising around the world, and that some people have tried to justify by saying, well, the war on Gaza stirred a lot of this up. President Trump actually has come up with a fragile ceasefire in that region, and yet this kind of hatred continues to rise around the world. So deeply troubling.
Now, as we go to Syria, Guy, take a look at this map. The army is naming 2 of the Iowa Guard members killed in this attack in Syria. Clearly, they are ISIS on the rise. The president talked about that and how they're going to pay for it. But you're seeing more of these targeted attacks. Yeah,
and here we are, we're talking about ISIS again. That's a common denominator here. The United States of America, Australia, Syria, vastly different places all over the globe with one common refrain. And whether it's specifically ISIS or this radical Islamism, it is a scourge, it is extremely dangerous, and people are going to take it seriously, or people are going to continue to die. And I think President Trump, quite rightly, furious about the stealing of 2 of our soldiers' lives in Syria by ISIS and vowing repercussions. I hope those come swiftly.
Howie, I know on this other story, Rob Reiner and his wife being killed in their home in Los Angeles, you have interviewed Rob Reiner before.
Yeah, and I got to know him a little bit, and he, tremendously successful movie actor, director, son of the comedy legend Carl Reiner, and yet there was an everyman quality about him. He hung out at the same Santa Monica restaurants that everybody else did, and he was a mensch, and he spoke out and denounced the murder of Charlie Kirk and had very gracious things to say about his widow, Erica. Now, there's no secret. I sparred with him about this on the air in the first term that Rob Reiner was a very liberal Democrat who had very strong criticism of President Trump. And yet, I have to say that for the President of the United States to take this family tragedy in which both Reiner and his wife were killed and say that it's because of Trump derangement syndrome, I thought was well beneath him and beneath the office, and I think it would have been better if the president had made no comment.
Yeah, Talking Points USA actually posted that clip with Piers Morgan. Take a listen.
When you first heard about the murder of Charlie Kirk, what was your immediate gut reaction to it?
Well, horror, absolute horror. And I unfortunately saw the video of it, and it's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable.
Turning Point's posting that guy. Meantime, there are Trump supporters out posting criticism. Robbie Starbuck, he's a conservative a supporter of the president. What happened last night to Rob Reiner and his wife was a savage butchering of 2 human lives. I don't care what their politics were or how they felt about Trump. No law-abiding human deserves this. We should pray for and send condolences to his loved ones and not make it political. Here's Senator John Kennedy.
I don't think the president should have commented. When the president says this kind of stuff, it detracts from his policy achievements and from his agenda.
So he's getting pushback, Guy.
As he should. There's a time and a place for politics and for trolling. A man being viciously murdered along with his wife, allegedly at the hand of their own son, is not that time or that place. And for the president to have put this out the way that he did achieves nothing and reflects poorly.
And Steph, he did put it out, and then he was asked about it and said basically the same thing publicly.
Yeah, Trump has continued to double down on his comments despite, hearing from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who have been pretty clear in condemning the president's tone. And it is unfortunate to have the president of the United States taking a tragedy like this and inserting politics into a situation as sad as the one that led to the Reiner's death. Especially after the year we've had, especially after political violence has been such a big issue this year, whether it was the killing of the state lawmakers in Minnesota earlier this year to the killing of Charlie Kirk. This has been a conversation, so it is unfortunate, especially after a weekend of so much tragic news, that we would hear from the president of the United States and that he would decide to insert politics into this discussion.
We'll see where it goes from here. Panel, thanks. Stand by.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.